The South China Sea has always been a region simmering with tension, its waters a crossroads of commerce, history, and competing national ambitions. For decades, rival claims and sporadic confrontations have kept the world's eyes fixed on these churning seas. But the underlying friction has rarely boiled over, until now. Today, October 7, 2025, marks a turning point. The stakes are higher than ever before, as the world watches events unfold with a sense of growing unease. The clock is ticking, and every moment brings new uncertainty to the region. The familiar pattern of diplomatic protests and tense Coast Guard standoffs has given way to something far more ominous. Now, the skies thunder with the roar of jet engines, and the horizon is dotted with the silhouettes of long-range bombers and fighter jets. The escalation is unmistakable. China's latest military exercises at Scarborough Shoal are anything but routine. These maneuvers are a bold, unmistakable show of force, sending shockwaves not only across Southeast Asia but all the way to Washington, D.C. and beyond. The message is clear. China is prepared to defend its claims with overwhelming might. What was once a slow-burning dispute has now erupted into a potential global flashpoint. The world is witnessing a transformation, a shift from shadowy maritime skirmishes to the brink of open military confrontation. The scale and sophistication of these drills are unprecedented. H-6 bombers, bristling with supersonic anti-ship missiles, soar above the waves, flanked by advanced frigates and squadrons of J-16 fighter jets. The display is both a warning and a demonstration of China's rapidly expanding military capabilities. China's message could not be clearer. Its claim to these contested waters is now backed by a formidable and modernized military force. The PLA's presence is meant to deter challengers and assert dominance over this strategic maritime crossroads. The conflict has evolved. What were once ambiguous encounters between coast guards have escalated into open displays of military power. The risk of miscalculation, of a single spark igniting a wider conflict, has never been greater. The timing of these exercises is no coincidence. Coinciding with China's National Day, the maneuvers are infused with nationalist symbolism, rallying domestic support and sending a message of unity and resolve to the world. Officially, China frames these actions as a defense of its sovereignty. But to its neighbors and the United States, this looks like a dangerous escalation, one that could draw in regional and global powers if the situation spirals out of control. Across the region, anxiety is palpable. In cities like Manila, people watch the news with growing fear, knowing that a single miscalculation or misunderstanding could trigger a catastrophic conflict with far-reaching consequences. Scarborough Shoal now stands at the center of this new and perilous chapter in the South China Sea, a symbol of rising tensions, shifting power, and the ever-present risk of war in one of the world's most vital waterways. Scarborough Shoal is more than a cluster of reefs, it's a strategic prize. Just 120 nautical miles from the Philippines, it sits well within Manila's exclusive economic zone under international law. For generations, Filipino fishermen have relied on these waters, but for China, the shoal is a critical military outpost. Control here would let Beijing dominate the South China Sea, secure its submarines, and stage operations near Taiwan. The dispute is a clash of principles: the Philippines, backed by a 2016 tribunal ruling, versus China's sweeping historical claims. China rejects international law, insisting on sovereignty rooted in history. Scarborough remains undeveloped, making it a flashpoint for military posturing. Beijing's dramatic displays aim to establish control it can't legally justify. The shoal is now the front line between a rules-based order and raw power. The arrival of the H-6 bomber over Scarborough Shoal marks a dangerous escalation in the ongoing tensions in the South China Sea. This is not just another routine patrol or a symbolic show of force. It's a clear demonstration of China's willingness to project power directly over disputed territory, sending a message not only to its neighbors, but to the entire world. This isn't a Coast Guard standoff. It's a strategic threat, with bombers capable of striking ships and land targets hundreds of miles away. The H-6, armed with advanced cruise missiles, can target enemy vessels and bases far beyond the immediate area, making it a formidable tool in China's arsenal. The H-6's presence signals China's growing confidence and reach, putting nearly the entire South China Sea within range of its powerful weapons. This move effectively places regional military bases, shipping lanes, and even civilian infrastructure at risk, raising the stakes for all involved. The bomber, flew as part of a joint force, with frigates and fighter jets, showcasing China's ability to conduct complex coordinated operations far from its mainland. These exercises are not just for show, they are rehearsals for real conflict, demonstrating how China could rapidly deploy overwhelming force in a crisis. This integrated force is designed to deter intervention and overwhelm adversaries, making any potential response from rival nations far more complicated and dangerous. The introduction of bombers shifts the conflict from risky patrols to high-stakes military brinkmanship. With heavy bombers now in play, the potential for miscalculation or accidental escalation has never been higher. The margin for error is shrinking, and the risk of a fatal encounter is rising. Every maneuver, every radar lock, and every radio call is now loaded with the possibility of triggering a wider conflict. The roar of the H-6 over the shoal is a clear warning. The rules have changed and the stakes are higher than ever before. The message is unmistakable. China is prepared to enforce its claims with overwhelming military might. China is ready to defend its claims with lethal force, and its military is on high alert, prepared to respond instantly to any perceived threat or challenge in these contested waters. The region has entered uncharted, perilous territory. With bombers now patrolling the skies, the South China Sea has become a flashpoint where a single misstep could ignite a conflict with global consequences. Outgunned, the Philippines has turned to a new weapon: information. Under President Marcos Jr., Manila's assertive transparency strategy means documenting and publicizing every Chinese incursion. Coast Guard crews and journalists capture footage of Chinese aggression, creating a powerful narrative for the world. These images generate global support and diplomatic pressure, casting the Philippines as David against Goliath. The strategy has raised international awareness and drawn support from the US, Japan, and Australia. But transparency alone can't stop warships. China's escalation with bombers shows the limits of this approach. The Philippines' military remains underpowered, unable to match China's might. Assertive transparency is vital, but Manila knows it must also strengthen its defenses and alliances. Information is a shield, but not enough to deter force. The Philippines' greatest asset in the face of regional uncertainty is its 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty with the United States. This historic agreement, signed in the aftermath of World War II, has served as the bedrock of Philippine security for over 7 decades, providing a crucial guarantee of American support in times of crisis. Washington has repeatedly and publicly affirmed that the treaty extends to cover attacks on Philippine forces in the South China Sea, a region fraught with territorial disputes. This clear commitment acts as a powerful deterrent, making China think twice before escalating to the use of lethal force against Philippine assets. The United States backs up its promises with visible action: regular warship patrols, expanded military exercises, and a growing presence of U.S. forces on Philippine soil. These moves place American and Filipino troops closer to potential flashpoints, signaling readiness to respond if tensions boil over. Beyond its alliance with the U.S., the Philippines is actively strengthening ties with other regional and global powers. Japan, Australia, and several European nations now participate in joint naval drills, demonstrating their support for international law and freedom of navigation in these contested waters. This growing coalition of like-minded states serves to diplomatically isolate China, reinforcing the principle that the South China Sea is not the domain of any single nation, but a global commons vital to international trade and security. Yet unity within Southeast Asia remains elusive. ASEAN, the region's main diplomatic bloc, is deeply divided, with many member states cautious about provoking Beijing and risking economic or political backlash. As a result, the Philippines finds itself relying more heavily on extra-regional partners, especially the United States, to balance China's growing assertiveness and to ensure its own security. The ongoing standoff at Scarborough Shoal has become a critical test of American resolve and the credibility of its alliance commitments. Each maneuver and counter-move is closely watched by allies and adversaries alike. Around the world, governments and citizens are watching to see whether the United States will risk direct confrontation with China to defend its long-standing partner, or if it will seek compromise in the face of rising tensions. The stakes for regional security, stability, and the future of international alliances have never been higher. The outcome of this delicate balance will shape the strategic landscape of Asia for years to come. China's power at Scarborough Shoal is the result of a sweeping military modernization. The PLA Navy is now the world's largest, with modern warships and carriers dominating the South China Sea. Advanced fighter jets, stealth aircraft, and a vast arsenal of anti-ship missiles create a formidable anti-access bubble. The H-6 bomber adds a flexible, mobile strike threat, complicating any adversary's defense. China's military buildup is about more than defense. It's about reshaping the Indo-Pacific order. By raising the cost of intervention, Beijing aims to deter the US from aiding its allies. The hardware at Scarborough is a tool of coercion, not just deterrence. China is challenging the US-led alliance system without firing a shot. Scarborough Shoal is now a symbol of national will and the clash of worldviews. For the Philippines, it's about sovereignty and resilience, small boats facing down a giant neighbor. For China, it's about ending a century of humiliation and asserting its place as a regional power. The shoal is where legal rulings and historical claims collide. Neither side can easily back down without losing face or legitimacy. The dispute is deeply emotional, leaving little room for compromise. Scarborough is a litmus test. Will Asia's future be shaped by law or by force? The rocks and reefs are now a line in the sand and the sea. The struggle here is for the soul of the regional order. The crowded waters around Scarborough Shoal are a powder keg. One misstep, a collision, a crash, or an accidental shot could trigger a crisis. If a Filipino is killed, Manila would likely invoke its defense treaty, forcing Washington to respond. A US-China clash would pit two nuclear powers against each other, with global consequences. China's gray zone tactics blur the line between provocation and war, making response decisions perilous. As military assets mix with Coast Guard and militia, the risk of lethal escalation grows. Nationalist fervor in both countries could quickly turn a minor incident into a major war. The region stands on a knife's edge, hoping to avoid disaster. The peace of the Indo-Pacific hangs in the balance. The crisis at Scarborough Shoal could lead to several futures. The most likely, a tense, militarized stalemate with constant risk of escalation. A diplomatic breakthrough is possible, but would require rare political will and creative compromise. The worst case, a clash that triggers the US-Philippines Treaty, drawing the world's superpowers into war. Such a conflict would devastate the global economy and cost countless lives. The outcome at Scarborough will shape the future of the Indo-Pacific order. It's a test of American resolve, Chinese ambition, and the strength of international law. The choices made now will decide if these waters become a bridge for peace or a battleground for a new era of conflict.